The smoke rose like a dark monster swallowing the sky, and the screaming alarms sliced through the morning air as if warning the whole city that something terrible was happening. People were running out of the towering glass building, coughing, crying, stumbling over their own fear. But amid the chaos stood a single father named Rafe Solberg, gripping his lunchbox in one hand and his daughter's forgotten school textbook in the other, both objects trembling along with his heart. He hadn't meant to be here. He was supposed to be on his way to work, supposed to be heading to the construction site where he earned his daily wages. But fate, in all its unpredictable cruelty, had pulled him toward the burning entrance, as if whispering that someone inside desperately needed him. Little did he know the life he would carry out of that suffocating inferno belonged to a woman whose world was far larger, colder, and more complicated than his own, and her first words to him would not be gratitude, but something that would sting his tired, overburdened spirit more deeply than the smoke stung his lungs. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in ordinary people doing extraordinary things, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. Your support reminds us that goodness still matters. Rafe had never been a man who looked for trouble, yet trouble always seemed to find him. A single father for 7 years, he had raised his daughter Evelyn with quiet determination, trying to shield her from the harshness of life after losing her mother. They lived in a small, rented room above an auto repair workshop, where the noise of tools became the lullaby of their nights. Money was always tight, and hope came in small portions, usually bundled inside Evelyn's smile. That morning, he had been halfway to dropping her forgotten textbook at school when he passed the corporate district and saw the flames tearing up the side of the glass building. People were streaming out of the lobby, shouting that the fire had spread too fast, that the top floors were still full of trapped employees, that the stairway had collapsed. Rafe's heartbeat surged. He had no training, no protective gear, no business entering a building that looked minutes from collapsing. But he also knew the look of pure terror on the faces fleeing the scene. He had once seen that same fear in the mirror when the hospital staff told him his wife wouldn't survive childbirth complications. He couldn't walk away from people trapped inside. He wouldn't. The firefighters hadn't arrived yet. Thick smoke snaked through the broken entrance, daring anyone to step inside, but Rafe did. He tossed aside the lunchbox and textbook, wrapped an old scarf around his mouth, and ran into the blazing structure. The walls groaned. Glass cracked overhead. Heat pushed against him with the force of a living creature trying to drive him out. But he pushed upward, climbing each step with stubborn courage, calling out into the smoke-filled hallways. He found a few employees on lower floors and guided them down, coughing, supporting their trembling bodies as they descended. But then the screams from the top floor reached him, weak, fading, desperate. He didn't think, he simply ran. When he burst into the executive level, flames had already crawled along the ceiling like burning vines. Papers floated as ashes, furniture softened and melted, and lying on the floor near a collapsed beam was a woman dressed in a once elegant cream suit, now stained with soot. She was barely conscious, her breath shallow, her legs pinned under debris. Rafe didn't know she was Maria Valcrest, the CEO of a major tech corporation, known for her ice-cold leadership and strict, almost intimidating presence. He only saw a human being fighting for breath. He shoved the burning beam aside using strength he didn't know he still had. He lifted her into his arms and carried her through suffocating smoke, stumbling down staircases, shielding her body with his own whenever embers rained from the ceiling. By the time he burst through the lobby doors, his clothes were half scorched and his vision was blurred. The crowd gasped as he emerged, carrying the unconscious CEO like a man carrying the last fragile fragment of hope. The paramedics rushed over. As they laid her on the stretcher and gave her oxygen, Maria's eyes fluttered open. People gathered, expecting her to ask who had saved her, expecting a soft moment of gratitude to balance the calamity behind them. But instead, her exhausted gaze locked on Rafe, and her first words, raspy and faint yet sharp as a shard of broken glass, were that he should not have risked touching her without protective gloves. She mumbled about liability, contamination, corporate policy, and unauthorized physical contact, all while Rafe stood frozen, his heart breaking in a way he hadn't expected. He wasn't looking for praise, but her coldness felt like a blade sliding into a place inside him that had already endured too much. He nodded quietly and stepped back, allowing the professionals to take over, feeling smaller than he had in years. The news spread quickly, how a construction worker saved a powerful CEO, how she scolded him instead of thanking him. The public began criticizing her fiercely, but Rafe refused to engage. He returned to his normal life, brushing soot off his jacket as if he could brush away the memory too. Aveline asked what had happened when she heard about the rescue on the radio, and Rafe simply said that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean being appreciated for it. He tucked her into bed that night and wondered why kindness felt so heavy on days like this. And then came the day when Maria invited Rafe and Aveline to a modest ceremony held outside the rebuilt company building. Instead of spotlighting herself or the corporation, she dedicated the event to the courage of ordinary people who step forward. When the world steps back, she honored Rafe openly, her voice trembling as she acknowledged the pain she had caused and the transformation his kindness had sparked in her life. The crowd applauded, and Rafe, humbled beyond words, felt his eyes fill with a rare mix of gratitude and disbelief. Aveline hugged his arm tightly, whispering that her dad was her hero long before anyone else said it. If this story touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Chronicles. It truly encourages us to keep bringing meaningful stories to the world. Before we end, please write one special sentence in the comments. Kindness changes everything. And so, in the golden clarity of day, two worlds that should never have collided found themselves woven together by fate, by courage, and by the quiet power of second chances.